Stephen Mansfield, New York Times bestselling author and speaker.
Doug Tenaple, I'm the creator of Earthworm Jim.
Tweet Groups.
I'm Victor Dweck.
Joseph Carter, I'm the Mink Man.
This is Dave Baker from Forged in Fire.
This is Leah Morgan. I'm a comedian, and this is why you should never
Never.
Not ever.
Don't waste your time.
Oh, you really should.
listen to those darling, yummy Reverend and the Reprobate.
Perfect.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Reverend and the Reprobate.
I don't want to do an open.
Yet again, somebody in our show at the end did not know how to say reprobate during one part of it.
Yeah. Well, he didn't go to college.
My favorite, I didn't go to Harvard.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm not saying he didn't, but
we don't know what his
that's been a
schooling's
running
like.
joke. Anyone that doesn't know reprobate, they always say for some reason,
I didn't go to college. I didn't go to college.
Especially Victor.
Yeah, well, he's very mashugana. So we'll just leave it at that. Man, so Thor Ramsey was a great interview. The guy was a lot of fun to be online with. He talks about his new movie, Church People, that's coming out. He talks about longevity and comedy. He's actually did.
Also,
his grammatical has rubbed off on me.
Also,
he's worked a lot with some of our former guests, with guys like Jeff Allen that have also had long comedy careers, and he has a similar story to Jeff and his coming to faith after having started comedy in the general market, realized that his faith was something that now had to be more important and more real to him. And as that, journey progressed, that his comedy's changed. That was an interesting story that I had heard nothing about. It talks a little bit about working with Wes who
Josh Doberman.
Yeah. And just a plethora of people that helped to make this movie happen. A lot of the stuff about rewrites, some behind the scenes stuff on how exactly that operated.
Oh, that sounds like a nightmare.
It really does.
I
but
already don't like writing. Just imagine going through like 8 rewrites for a movie.
I think he says at one point he did 30 on his own before Wes came on board, and Wes, who's a great friend and a magician, was able to go in and make some changes. They fought in order to keep the movie a satirical comedy.
I'm so glad that they did.
I am too. So
they would have ruined that poor movie, making it all serious.
Right.
We need comedy, you guys.
That the world needs to laugh.
We need comedy. The world needs comedy. Make funny movies.
Also, and
make funny movies or movies about zombies.
Yeah.
And if you combine the two, you've got Zombieland.
And if you are a pastor and you can't make the gospel interesting,
just read it.
Yeah, Thor says go home. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, reverends, reprobates, retrobates.
Welcome to Removing Moles for Movies.
Oh, yeah.
You'll find out. Story. Check it out.
Like and subscribe. Let's go. Let's do it. Will Danley, Expo, on our lines today. We are joined by a legend in Christian comedy. And I say that in one of the most positive ways, because there is something to being a legend, as we learned from Jeff Allen, that means that you're old. That's what Jeff said. Those aren't our words. But it also means that you've got some staying power and sustainability. I first learned of our guest because he was on tour with Shonda Pierce. He's also a prolific. Yeah. Also a prolific author. He's got The Protest Show, which is a podcast that he does. He's a writer and stars in the movie Church People. Welcome to the show, The Reverend and the Reprobate.
Yeah.
Thor Ramsey. What's going on, boss?
Church, man, that is old. So you must have been watching me when you're like 8, watching Bananas or something.
Somewhere in there, yeah, like right after the Wiggles was Thor Ramsey on Tuesday mornings. So
I have people in their I have Generation Z come up to me now and millennials going, "I watched you when I was a kid." So that's
yeah, we're right at the beginning of the millennials. I think both of us are where we're both. You're 84, right?
85.
Okay, so we're both 85. We're both 85 models.
But I'm non-binary for both of those years.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, it's hard to say when all of that stuff happened. Man,
you look a little non-binary now, guys. But I won't say anything. So.
So, man, you've got so much stuff going on, and I want to get to, and I want to promote Church People.
Yes.
I'm just finding out. I've ordered the most encouraging book on hell ever, and the comedian version on theology, because as I'm hearing more of your comedy and the stuff that you've written, I'm very curious about how the books go. But I've got a few friends that have read them that have great reviews. First and foremost, how did you have this kind of sustainability in the Christian circles, especially being a comedian, where it seems like more and more that is becoming a maligned art? How is it? What's been your secret to longevity there?
Well, yeah, I don't know, to be honest. I think some of it is it's timing. You started at it's all about timing. You started at the right time because, so I started in clubs so let me give you a little comedy history, which will go from the secular to the Christian, because that's how things always go generally. Right. The Christian follows the secular trend a lot of times. But so back in the 70s, there was what we call a comedy boom. Steve Martin really started. Steve Martin came out with this album called Let's Get Small in about 1977. And it was so popular. I mean, in his early career as a stand-up, he was like rock star level, which was unheard of for a comedian. And so with that, he inspired a whole generation of suburbanite white kids primarily. And then you had Richard Pryor coming along too, but they were both selling out, stadiums. And so there was this ton of comedians. And so you had comedy clubs popping up all over the country, but these were like one-nighters, and they'd clear off the dance floor and throw up a microphone, and the people would gather around, and there'd be a comedian in town for one night at Yankton, South Dakota or somewhere, or, Mitchell, South Dakota, home of the Corn Palace. They've got their own stage going on. But so there was just this big boom, and it's like the housing boom, really. They had this glut of comedy clubs and not enough comedians. So, man, you could start, and I was like, you're working right away because there were so many clubs. And I started in 87, which was like it was the decline of the boom, but like the housing market, you could still get in on the end and make a bunch of money, because the prices were still high. So I started in 1987, and within a year, I was working 42 weeks a year.
Good grief.
And so, yeah, just making, I was an MC. I was making $300 a week. Here's what's interesting about comedy. It's now 2020. I bet that price has not gone up. I bet MCs are still getting paid $300 a week.
It's a little less lucrative, huh?
Yeah. So, so you get $300 as a MC, $500 to $700 as a middle act, and then headliners got paid. There was a time when unknown headliners were getting $5,000 a week.
Good.
These are people you'd never heard of in your life. Yeah. They're making $5,000 a week. So the pay scale was all over the place. But so in about, I would say in about the early 90s, because in the Christian market, so to speak, and there was a Christian market because Christian films are a genre, Christian comedy is a genre. There are genres in the Christian market. And, because it used to be, there was Mike Warnke, and that was the only comedian you'd ever heard of in the Christian realm. And then there was Shonda Pierce and Mark Lowry, and that was it. Yeah. And then in about the early 90s, you had several people, myself, Jeff Allen, Brad Stein, people that had careers, well, so to speak, as much as we can say, careers in the secular market. And then we had our God moment. All our stories are different, but we either came back to faith. Brad was practicing his faith while working in the secular markets. And Brad worked with me when I was like the most backslidden human being on the face. You would have met me and gone, this guy's the furthest from the kingdom of God. I would be afraid to bring up Jesus to this guy. And yet in my heart, I still believed everything was true. I just didn't. So the whole long story, but I worked with Brad back in that day, but a bunch of us went through our moments where we either came to faith or came back to faith. And we slowly entered into the Christian market. And I think that's some of the longevities that we started when it was still, that you could probably name 20 Christian comedians in the country at the time. And then it just built from there year after year, and just, and the quality gets better over time. I think the quality of Christian comedians is better today than it was when, I still think Brad and Jeff are great comedians. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I think there's Christian comedy always has a growth with it. And I think you got some really great, John Christ, is a great comedian.
Yeah.
So there you have it. There's the story of longevity. Not funny at all. You got any other questions?
Yeah. We've got plenty of questions for you, but we had you on the show not just for for comedy's sake, but also because you are a fascinating character.
You joke.
Yeah.
I
make more jokes.
Me make jokes.
Yeah.
So.
We think your career's been fascinating. Not just the longevity, but the breadth of things that you've been involved in, from both the very funny to the very thoughtful with some of the stuff that you address on the podcast. Even though you come from a place of humor to address some very serious issues that are happening right now, but the big thing that you've got going on is the movie Church People.
Church People.
So talk to us about Church People. Go ahead.
Did they make you shave?
For Church People? No, but they did make me remove a mole from the side of my head, and that's true.
Really?
I had a mole on the side of my head right here, and to be a leading man in a film, they made me go to a dermatologist, and he cut that mole off.
So it wasn't like crusty or discolored or anything. It was just you have a mole.
It was just,
and
apparently
it's not right here.
Apparently it was unsightly to people, I guess.
Wow.
I'd had it my whole career, but my heritage is German. Apparently we're kind of moly people. If you look around, I got some bumps on my face.
So did Stephen Baldwin personally request that you remove
his
his mole?
Actually.
Wow.
He did.
with his coffee, that's what is it? It's coffee with like 10 pumps of peppermint.
Yeah. He was very tactful. He just said, "Hey, I don't want you to get this wrong, but can you have that mole removed?" I'm like, "Not a problem. Yeah, sure, I'll do that.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I want to be in a film. I'll remove them. What else would you like cut off? I want to be in the movie.
Also shave. Also change your name to Odin.
Yeah. So how long have
That'll
you
be
guys
the
been...
last joke about Thor. I promise.
That's all right.
I'm very envious of your name. It's very cool.
Yes,
and he really is because he loves Thor.
There's a lot happening right now where I feel just masculinely inferior to our guest today.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't get that a lot. In the day I was a metrosexual, which I don't know if that phrase ever caught on.
I know what it is.
Yep.
So a metrosexual is actually a straight guy that other straight guys think is gay, so they beat him up. So
I
that's
also wore makeup one time.
Yeah, back in the day.
I wore makeup to a show. We were in a band, and one day he showed up, and the rest of the band, except for him, was wearing eyeliner.
I refused to do it, and they were like, "This is hardcore," and I was like, "It's not hardcore. You're wearing ladies' makeup. There's nothing about that's hardcore at all." So, how long have you guys been in production for Church People? Because I've heard a couple of times that this is a movie that you had been writing or been trying to get produced for nearly a decade now.
That's accurate.
Yeah, what's that journey been like, and how long have you actually been working on it?
So I started the script probably in about 2009. So I'd written a couple of romantic comedies for the general market, high concept. I like big ideas.
Right.
And, so they were high concept romantic comedies, but I was trying to do something for the Christian market that was just kind of slice of life. I was monitoring independent features. And so Jon Favreau, that your listeners might know from he created The Mandalorian.
Yeah, everything. He's fantastic.
Speechwriter for President Obama.
Those episodes. He's a speechwriter for President Obama?
Yeah, he was a speechwriter for President Obama. No lie.
Jon Favreau?
Jon Favreau was. Yep.
The guy who wrote Elf and directed it? Oh, he didn't write Elf. He directed Elf.
Yeah, the guy that directed Elf and directed the first Iron Man movie
he's
also a
speechwriter for President Obama.
Chef.
He's an actor. He played Rudy's frumpy friend in the movie Rudy.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But all that to say, Elf is one of my favorite movies. But I think his first directorial debut was about 2010 in a movie. It was a movie called Swingers.
Yep.
And Swingers it was made for $200,000. It was a slice of life about a guy whose girlfriend breaks up with him and his buddies are trying to help him get over it. That's the whole premise. And it was a cute little film. I liked the tone of it. So I tried to take that tone and bring it to the Christian world. And I was just writing a story about a youth pastor in crisis. And that was the whole idea.
Right.
So back when I had a career I really cared about, I had a manager and he got me a meeting with Sony Faith. As you get older, you care less about these things. So I'm at that stage now where I'm willing to talk about anything.
I understand.
I think we're
on that road.
Yeah,
I think we're not there yet, but we're on the road.
Here's the thing.
We're
I'm
old
fine.
souls.
If you get there sooner, it actually helps your career. Once you stop
Just
caring
don't
about
care.
your career, that's the best thing you can do for your career. I don't understand. I don't know how that is. But anyway, I got a meeting with Sony. They were Sony Affirm, which is like the Christian division of Sony Pictures. And so I went in there, and the night before I took 2 friends out to dinner, and I'm like, I'm practicing my 2-minute pitches on you for these, because I got these solid screenplays. I'm going to give them these 2-minute pitches for these romantic comedies. They're going to go for one of these because these are amazing ideas. And so I'm pitching these, screenplays to them and my 2-minute pitch. And they're like, did you not prepare for this meeting? We're faith-based. We want a faith-based comedy. So they didn't say comedy. We want a faith-based story. So I got this idea about a youth pastor in crisis. So like, we want to see that. So I said, well, give me a week, because I only had 30 pages of it. And I didn't tell them that. So I went home that week, wrote
Good
it,
call.
sent it off. And there's a guy, he's still there, Josh Nadler, who's at Sony Affirm. He's a great guy. He calls me up and gives me notes over the phone. And so I do a rewrite, send it off to him. He does this 5 times. And I'm like, I think this is just normal, but apparently it's not. But he's that good a guy where he gives me notes on my screenplay 5 times. And the last meeting, he said, what your story needs right now to bring all the characters together is a big idea. And I'm like, it's like, I was a high concept guy, but I was trying to go slice of life because it's, low budget.
Right.
But he goes, you need a big idea. I'm like, okay, my antennas are up. I'm looking for a big idea. And I was part of a church plant back in the day. I wasn't the lead pastor, but I was a part of a church plant. I've always had a heart for the church. And so my best friend, who's the lead pastor, calls me up and he goes, you're not going to believe what Mars Hill is doing. They're defunct now, so I can use their name.
Right. Now, which Mars Hill was this?
Mark Driscoll's Mars Hill.
Okay. Gotcha.
So Mark Driscoll, Mars Hill Church, not the Rob Bell. They're still in existence, I think. I think Rob Bell, crashed and burned, but
right.
Mars Hill, Grand Rapids is still around. I don't know if they're called Mars Hill anymore, but this is Mars Hill, Seattle, Mark Driscoll. And my friend calls me up. You're not going to believe what Mars Hill is doing for Good Friday. I'm like, what?
No way.
This is me. This is
no
him.
way.
What are they doing? And he's like, they're crucifying
No way.
someone. I go, that's what I said. No way. He goes, no, I'm looking at their social media. I'm like, I got to check this out. So I get on social media. This is me on social media. And it turns out that they were only doing a passion play, but it was going to be so graphic that all their warnings about blood and fainting and stuff were so it seemed like he interpreted it as they were actually going to crucify someone. But here's what I realized, that so many American evangelical pastors had done such crazy things to attract people to church.
It's not that crazy.
It's
not completely
BMX
far-fetched.
bikes jumping around and little motorcycles and Superman
roller coasters.
costumes,
Yeah.
all this stuff. That for a moment, my friend and I actually believed that an American evangelical church would actually crucify someone.
Mm-hmm.
And at that moment, I go, I've got my big idea. I knew that was going to be it. And so that became the centerpiece of all the 30 rewrites after that. And as that pretty much stayed the central idea of the story, which played into, a serious issue. But I always say to people, Church People is a satire. We had to, this is a story in itself. We had to fight to keep it a comedy.
Good.
And
I'm
it's
glad you
actually
did.
Really?
It's actually, there's a funnier movie on the cutting room floor than there is actually, but people are liking it. I'm still happy people call it a comedy.
Right.
But it's a satire. And I always tell people, it's like, you can only satirize what you love, because when you satire, and we love Jesus, we love the church, so it doesn't come across as mean, because if you've ever seen a satire from someone who doesn't love what they're satirizing, it comes across
Saturday Night Live and Trump, and everybody in Trump.
Yeah, it gets very mean. It's not, and meanness is really not. It's just for the sake of people writing it. Yeah. When you satirize something you love, there's actually a redemptive quality to it, and I think Church People is clearly redemptive when you watch it. I don't know if you guys have seen it yet, but it's redemptive. We should have sent you a screener.
Well, we're trying to we wanted to talk to you a little bit about the online screening process.
Yeah.
Because that to me is completely fascinating, the way that you guys are doing the online screenings now, where you can sign up. If you go to churchpeoplefilm.com, there's a way that you can sign up to watch the movie online. You can buy tickets for it. They're $19.99 a piece. And then there's a 4-hour window where you get to watch it, and an opportunity for a Q&A on some of these different appointments. And you have 4 hours to watch the movie, and then all of the bonus content and stuff that you guys have to go along with it. this is a wonderful way to pivot during COVID, and I wanted to know what that experience has been like doing some of the virtual screening stuff.
Well, all the interviews have been like this, so it's been just what you're experiencing now. That's what it's been like.
Oh, great!
Except that we're way funnier. Right?
Yeah, we're better than most of those people.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
But they did release it. It was theatrically released March 13th through the 15th.
Right.
But now the theaters were open. But we were number 10 at the box office nationwide, so that was a big deal.
That's awesome, man.
During COVID. But hopefully they'll do what they call a bring back, because it did well. So they'll do a Fathom, maybe a 1 night or 2 night Fathom event once all the theaters are open. Because right now what I'm hoping is that, because it's kind of a 3-stage release process. There was a national theatrical release. Now there's this month of what you were just mentioning, that churches can screen it in their churches, just like a movie theater. People can buy the tickets, put it up on their big screen.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, we're thinking about it.
Yeah. And so I just was at an event last Friday where they did that. And since I was there, we did a Q&A afterwards. That was kind of fun. But it was the biggest screen I'd seen it on, because I had theaters where I'm at in California, nothing was open.
Right.
So the director, Christopher Sean Shaw, up in Northern California where he is, there was a few theaters open, so he was able to see it in a theater. But and then Salem Now, which is kind of a network of radio stations and shows that you can rent it or buy it on Salem Now on their network, and then eventually it'll roll out through digital media, Prime Video and iMovie and all that.
Well, I'm very glad that you made it. I think the church. I think we as a nation are ready for satire.
Yes.
For I mean, we love the Babylon Bee. It's the funniest stuff.
Yeah.
It's the funniest thing that's out right now. It's and the trailer for Church People had me laughing hysterically when it got to the big idea.
I'll put that trailer up against any movie trailer.
Yep.
That Collide Media that put the trailer together did such a great job, because if you guys are like me, and it's like, if you're in between your series and you don't know what to watch, you're searching for something and you'll end up on iMovie or whatever, and you'll start watching trailers.
Yeah.
And I'll literally sit there 40 minutes later. I'm like, I've just spent 40 minutes watching trailers. I'm not going to watch anything now because I've already spent half the time I could have watched a movie. I'm frustrated with myself. But I will say, after watching all these trailers, I'm like, our trailer is one of the best trailers going.
It's hysterical.
So,
and I couldn't believe it was
trailers. Come back, watch our trailer, and you go, "That's one of the best trailers I've seen tonight."
Yeah, and I couldn't believe this is a church movie. Like this seems like something I'd if I weren't married, or I am married, so I'll take my wife to go see it when the theaters reopen. But I could see me going to the theater to go watch it, which was a unique thought that I had not thought before with all the other Kevin Conroy and.
Do you mean Kevin Sorbo?
Oh yeah. Kevin Conroy is
the voice
Batman.
of Batman.
Kevin Sorbo's Hercules, and then Kirk Cameron is a lot of people.
Yeah.
So let me do. I have to make a quick call. Believe it or not.
No, you're
Kevin
good.
Sorbo.
I've got a Zoom meeting scheduled for right now because I forgot about this interview. I just have to tell him I'm going to be a little late.
Sweet.
Oh, I thought you were about to call Kevin Sorbo.
That'd be great.
No.
Yeah.
I'm actually calling Christopher Sean Shaw.
Oh, hey. Well, just tell him to pop on.
Yeah, hey. So I have this interview. I'm doing a podcast right now. I completely forgot about it. So as soon as this is over, I'll jump on later. But anyway, yeah. So it's opened up some doors, So we're having meetings, talking to people about other screenplays, I've written, and trying to get other projects on the. So that's why I'm hoping that it'll pick up steam and kind of become a. Can you have a cult hit in evangelicalism, or is that wrong to say?
Well, I think that's one of the things we were kind of discussing off air beforehand. Is it's been such a long time since we've wanted to go see a movie, but the fact that we wanted to go see a Christian comedy felt completely foreign.
It felt wrong.
Yeah, which is so weird. So how you guys have kind of captured what it looks like lightning in a bottle here. You said it's opening up some new doors for you and things like that.
So here's what happened kind of is like, so you write this comedy and they're like, they read the screenplay like, this is out of the box. We love this. We're waiting to do something new. And then it gets funded. Right now you have money involved and they're like, oh no, we better play it safe. We better go back because, well, if you look at
no lightning, just
films
thunder.
are a genre. That's my argument now is
the God of Thunder.
I don't have, because I struggled with it before. I struggled with the Christian genre. Even as I was doing stand-up, I struggled with the Christian genre. But now I'm all for it because, people give Christian films a lot of flack. And you guys make a lot of bad films. And I'm like, yeah, so what? I would say to the secular audience, you guys do too. As a matter of fact, you guys make more bad films than we do because there's more of you.
Yeah.
Now, you make better films? Yeah, because there's more of you and you have more money. So don't criticize us because we need this genre, because right now there's not if you're looking to be a creative, like writer or director, there's not a voice for you at the table in Hollywood. There's just not. That's the reality. People can argue that with me, but if you want to make a film that has a strong Christian content, we don't have a place at the table. Yeah. You can barely have a place at the table if your politics are conservative in Hollywood, let alone Christian. And those are just facts. So my reasoning now is the subculture of Christian filmmaking or whatever else is vital. It's needed. Otherwise, there's no voice for it and there's no representation. Christians want to see themselves represented in films and different things. So, and that's what Christian films are. They're a genre of film. And to be a genre of film, you have to hit certain points. Now, I think we want to try to be, but if you look at the last decade, Christian films, just same as Christian comedy, the production values of the Christian films have gotten better. The stories have gotten better. The acting has gotten better. It's all gotten better. So, aside from my grammar, but it's all, become much more professional. And we just have to get more creative on our story end. And I think then one day we'll have a crossover. But here's the thing. You can't plan to have a crossover. You can't go, we're writing a crossover because you can't plan that kind of thing. You write a Christian genre film. Now, I make this argument. Any film that people relate to, they relate to it because it has its subtext in God's reality, because there's only one reality, the way God created things to work. And when you write a film that people relate to, there's a common grace. All films that have redemptive stories, or even if they're not overtly Christian, we relate to them. We like those stories because they're grounded in reality. Yeah. So a Christian crossover will be grounded in reality, of course, but it will have Christian themes and elements, but it'll relate to people on a wider level someday in a wider audience. But I don't think that can be planned. I think that will just happen one day. I
know that when you're talking about a crossover, you're not talking about a specific vehicle, but if you could do a crossover with a current vehicle, what would you pick?
If I could do it now, I've written some romantic comedies for the general market, but I wouldn't consider them. They're just, so a crossover, if I could do it in a genre, you mean?
Yeah. Or a specific movie. Like, would you make a Christian Transformers or?
Oh, well, I think that's the problem with Christian.
Because that's not a crossover.
Right now, right. We want to make the Christian Taken. Right. Yep. We're going to call it I'm Coming for You. And then we're going to make a sequel, I'm Coming for You Again. And the third, I'm Coming for You Yet Again. So be watching me. And we'll cast someone who kind of, we need a Liam Neeson character.
Starring Matt Chandler.
Yeah. Christian films do that a lot. I think that's a mistake.
Yeah.
Because you
want to make a standalone.
To try to write toward what you think people want.
Right.
If you're writing toward what you think people want, you're already a disaster, I think, because you got to find a story you're passionate about and write from the story. I didn't begin church people with what message do I want to send. I began church people with, what's a cool idea? What's an interesting idea that excites me? I'm going,
and there's
an evangelical church that really wants to crucify someone, and that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
I go, that's where the story came from. Now the message, because we're dealing with evangelical culture, the message is built in. We didn't have to force it in. Yeah. So my encouragement to Christian screenwriters or movie makers is just find the story you're passionate about, write that story. If you're writing from a Christian worldview, your themes will emerge. So you won't have to shoehorn your message in there.
So I do need to know, because this is a good segue with what you're talking about, that the absurd, not so absurd premise of the crucifying somebody on Easter Sunday.
Yeah.
As a pastor and as a comedian and a filmmaker, do you find yourself suppressing the comedic side as a pastor where I'm sure that there are constantly things, people coming to you with a complaint that you just want to make fun of or
No, I don't actually, because I'm a pastor of a small church. So
okay.
Same.
It's so here's this, and I think church people plays into this a little bit, but because church people plays into some themes, and the big theme of church people is the gospel enough? Do we, because once in a while I have pastors come to me and they'll say, "Hey, give me some pointers on how I can make my sermons funnier and more interesting." Like, well, number one, don't try to be funny. That's the worst thing a pastor can do, is try to be funny. It's like, if you're giving a sermon and you happen to say something and it happens to be funny, fantastic. If it's natural, just be yourself. If you're naturally funny, that'll come out in your sermons. Though I still contend that Matt Chandler sits down with a team of people and they decide they hone those crafts, because Matt Chandler ends up doing comedy bits.
Yeah, that dude is hysterical.
He's amazing.
Yeah, he's as funny as most Christian comedians, but he doesn't have comedy as an outlet in his daily, he doesn't perform around the country. So he needs that as an outlet. So whatever's driving him to be funny, it's like he's got that comedic element. But I'm guaranteeing those are planned. Those aren't all just off the cuff. It's like, you guys sat down and honed this out. Now, some of them kind of off the cuff, but a lot of that is they've sat down before, because these are intro segments. But most pastors are not at the level of comedic talent as Matt Chandler. But my point is, Matt Chandler's naturally funny. Yeah. So if you're naturally funny, just be naturally funny during a sermon. Don't force it. And you don't have to. This is the point, though. You don't have to make the gospel more interesting. That's such a dumb idea. It's like you're talking about the greatest truths, not the greatest. You're talking about the greatest truth to all humanity, the greatest historical event on the face of the earth. If you can't make that interesting, just get out, go on, do something else, whatever. But if you can't make that interesting, just stop talking, because it's interesting. And if you don't find it interesting, the audience won't find it interesting. So that's the whole thing about preaching right there. But there was another point. Oh, the other point is this: people coming to you, So here's my thing. I think the biggest, and now this is my serious issue, the biggest issue with the evangelicalism to me today is the mentality. And the mentality is this, in my opinion. So, and I'm rounding these numbers up. You can, don't quote me on the numbers. But
I'm going to fact check you live.
Yeah, we'll have USA Today fact check you.
The numbers are fact check me. The numbers are relatively true for the point. Let's say there are about 400,000 churches in America, and there are about 400,000 churches. Now, if we're very liberal, we could say only 50% of those believe the Bible is the word of God, but I would venture to say it's more like probably 30% of that. But for the sake of math and my insufficiency there, let's go with 50%. So let's say 50% of those, so 200,000 churches believe the Bible. Only 1,000 of those churches are mega churches. Only 1,000. So that leaves 199,000 other churches. The average size of a church in America is 50 people. And you got some range, 50 to 100 to 200, but your average church is 50 people.
Relatively small.
The problem is the mentality of the mega churches dominates the entire church landscape. So all small churches and all the church growth stuff that we're given, we're all fed something like we're all supposed to become these mega churches. And that's just false. Because even if you look at the history of a lot of mega churches, it is not their methodology that made them a mega church. It is the circumstances where they happened to be, the city they were in. It was timing in one sense. What I'm trying to get across here is not all mega churches are you can't duplicate that all the time.
Yep.
And we live in this culture where we think the small churches think they have to duplicate that. Now, do we want to reach people? Yes. Yeah, a small church wants to reach people, but God decides if you're going to reach 10 or 100 or 200. That's God's decision. What we're called is to love the people and shepherd the people that are in front of us. And the mega church mentality is not about shepherding. It is just not about shepherding. And I'm not against mega churches. Don't get me wrong. I think some mega churches are doing it right, but it's not the norm. So their conversation shouldn't dominate the landscape. The norm is the pastor who has 50 people that he may bury. He may never grow past 50. He's going to pastor them until he buries the last one, and then he's going to retire. But And that's really the way to go out as a church planter. But the point is,
well, thank you for that uplifting message. This has been Thor Ramsey.
Well, the point is this: it's discouraging to small churches thinking that they're never at the point they should be. Mm-hmm. You know, like when you have people leave your church and they say, you know, okay, here's the idea. So we had a couple leave our church about a month ago, and they came to me and said, you know, we just don't feel like we're as far along as we should be. Like, well, you know, we just had we just had a year of shutdown with COVID, but you know, I'll take your, you know, and the other thing is they'd never been part of a church plant. Mm-hmm. So where do they get the idea that we're not as far along as we should be? It comes from this mega church mentality. They'd always been a part of big churches. They'd never been a part of a church plant before. So they just assumed we'd start and just explode and become a gigantic church because, you know, I'm such a dynamic personality that I'm clearly just going to draw people left and right. People move them from South Dakota and Iowa just to be part of my church. Clearly. Well, that's not the case. That is just not the case. You're called to shepherd and I think shepherding, again, this took me, because preaching is my big thing. I'm big on preaching. I think preaching is important. Theology is important. It's all important. But I'm finding that, you know, if you just open the Bible as a pastor and you go verse by verse, you can't do too much damage if you just reiterate what's there. It's like the Bible will really preach itself if you'll just open it and kind of read it and kind of then go give some background and talk about how that's applying to today and just, you know, don't go too off the cuff. But the Bible will preach itself. But the shepherding of the people, that's the big thing. Getting to know those people. And you're finding out not a lot of people, there's some people, they don't want to be shepherded. They don't want to shepherd. They don't want people to know what's going on in their lives. So that's part of the challenge right there. But that is the challenge of pastoring. And the point is, I'm trying to encourage the small church pastor is like, you're being an effective small church pastor because that's what it's about. You're not supposed to be a giant mega church. Most aren't. The majority of 50 is the norm. So if you're 50, you're the norm. You're the norm. Your church is normal. What you're doing is normal. Your worship is normal. Everything's normal for you. And this just be the ordinary church. And that's the other big. Now, church people only touches on that. Again, I just have to reiterate, I'm not against big churches. What I am against is that their methodology dominates the landscape. Because their methodology is what I have an issue with.
Yeah, and we're in the Dallas area, and so we've got plenty of them around here. Literally we could stand, and not just mega churches in general, but we could identify 10 easily in our zip code that are over 2,000 members.
You could throw a stone and crack a glass cathedral.
Yeah.
That's exactly,
yeah. And our church, the church that I pastor, we're...
Yeah, you're a mega church.
Yeah, we are. I mean, by those standards of if 50 is the norm, we are, because we run about 110. And
so you guys are enormous, but I would say because I'll get it 50 to 200. Now I think you have to be. It used to be you had to be 1,000 to be a mega church. Now I think they might have dropped it down to. I've seen it. You know, it's kind of like the Generation Z millennial, the birth date. You know, so you're on the cusp. But if you're 700 to 1,000, then you could probably be classified as a mega church. But
and you don't want to.
When we're talking about mega churches, we're talking about huge churches.
Yeah, and you don't want to leave anybody out. If somebody wants to feel like they're a mega church, we can lower the numbers to help them. You know, but I
will say this: if it was just the camera in our service, you would think we were a mega church because that's how well we do things.
Well, that's good to hear.
That's a nice flex.
Yeah. I think I can relate to you on a lot of those things, just because the way that, especially over the last 12 months, that everything has been structured, that everything is rolled out, it has all been targeted at, like, if your church is 800 plus people, this is how you're supposed to do it. And like you said, statistics show, and so do, like, if you've ever been to a conference with other pastors, most pastors are in that place where they're, 50 to 70 people. They're bivocational, and they're doing whatever they can in order to make sure that their people get fed every week. And the target is, from all of the literature and stuff, is that those guys at the very top, the 1% of the 1%.
And that's tragic. And that's tragic. And some of that is because of it's the marketing.
Yeah.
If you're a pastor of 5,000 people, then you can write a book, and it's about sale. This is what I was asked when I had my first book published, which was surprising to me, but it was, what's your platform?
Oh, wow.
I thought they were actually concerned about the content of my book. And to be honest, they really weren't. which is probably why I had a book published. But they weren't so concerned about that, but they were concerned about my platform. How many? So, we could sell them. Had the series. I just done the first Thou Shalt Laugh. I can be in front of this many people per week. Like, oh, he can sell the book.
Yep.
Did you show them the big tech song?
He can market the book. That's recent. That's okay. Recent. I didn't show him the big
that song is still stuck in my head.
That's
it's been playing on a loop.
From a catchy tune, Time Me Kangaroo Down, Mate. So
yeah. It has been the bane of my wife's existence for the last few days. So I'm like, give me my platform back, Jack. Just hear a door slam across the house. I'm like, what's that? She goes, that is the rest of your night. You are in the living room. Yeah. Don't come in here with that tune. You had mentioned earlier working with Wes. So Wes came in. He's one of Stephen Baldwin's guys, from what I understand. He's worked with him on a lot of films. What was it like after having all these conversations about rewriting and changing things, then finding your big thing, to work with Wes in what was, I guess, the final revamping, getting to
Wes to me
production?
was a godsend.
Okay.
To me, I said that to Wes before. I felt like, so here's what happened to this. I don't share this story often because you try to be positive about that. And it was very positive. The whole thing, Christopher Sean Shaw and I, the director, we've made about close to a dozen short films together.
Okay.
And even on a short film, like the very first one that we worked on called Skip Listening, which I think people can see if they go to his search for Christopher Sean Shaw on YouTube, you can find he's got all the stuff on his YouTube channel. Skip Listening was the first thing we did, and which I actually wrote a feature-length script for now that we're trying to get produced. But even on Skip Listening, we had the same crew that we'd have for a major motion picture. We just did a 3-day shoot. It was all, but the same crew was there, the same kind of tension, because when you get a bunch of creatives involved in a project, everyone thinks their vision's the best, their idea is the funniest, et cetera, et cetera. So it can get tense.
Yeah.
So we developed a motto where when things on set started getting tense, one of us would yell out, "Fun!" Because we're making a movie. I mean, this is what people dream of doing. If you can't have fun doing it, do something else, because this is actually fun. And that's, church people was like going to camp for 21 days. It literally was. It was like church. It was film camp for an idiot like me. And it was absolute fun. And that translates into the film. So we've always had that attitude. But some of the behind the scenes stuff, can get tense. So I did 30 rewrites on my own. I felt like I knew the story, but there's different things that get involved. You get different creatives involved, and you got to make some script changes. But one of the things somebody, I won't say who, it wasn't Steven, but somebody involved in the project.
It was Donald.
Donald Faison. It was his call.
It was Donald Faison, yes. And that guy, I'll never forgive this guy. But no, it wasn't Donald. They wanted it to be dramatic rather than comedic. So they had a guy come in who's a good guy, and it was his gig, but he rewrote it and basically took out all the comedy. And so Wes and I were having because Wes was already on as helping in production at this point. So Wes and I were talking and said, let's go to Steven and see if because the person who did it had kind of power that was more power than we had,
right,
so to speak. And I'm just talking social power. On paper, we were all the same, but it was one of those things where you just don't want to make a war. So we were trying to be diplomatic. So we went to Steve and said, can we give it a rewrite and just punch it up? It's called a punch up. Yeah. Punch up the script. And so he said, yeah. So we basically spent a month together doing the last rewrite. And that to me was the saving grace of the film. That it stayed a comedy. Now, even after filming though, they still, because that person was still there fighting for it to be more dramatic, they cut a lot of comedy out. But still maintained a comedy. But I have nothing but good things to say about Wes coming in. We spent a month together, so that's like I went on a honeymoon with Wes in one sense. So you can't say bad things about a man you went on a honeymoon with.
Did you carry him over the threshold?
Well, in one sense, when the film ended, I picked him up and carried him off the set. So kind of reverse.
Oh, there you go.
Well, that was very romantic of you.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah, it was. But yeah, Wes was great to work with. We spent a lot of time together, and I imagine we'll work together. If God wills, we'd work together in the future because here's the thing you find if you say I'll work with somebody in the future, because there's only one person in the whole production like I'll never work with them again. and it's the person who wants to make it a dramedy, because that's where the tension came from.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the story was there, it was fun, and that was the only struggle with that.
Well, thank you for making a fun comedy.
Yeah.
For Christians, because
Yeah.
I mean, and I will say it doesn't look like it's for Christians exclusively, but if you've been in church, there's a lot of funny stuff that happens that is worth, like you mentioned, if you love it, you want to laugh about it. You know, there's a lot of good stuff that I saw just in the brief few moments of the trailer that it just looks hysterical. So I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, and I think that this is a great movie. Like you said, if you've been in church, if your life has been touched by church in some way, especially negatively, the fact that Christians are able to look at what we're doing from a view where we can poke fun at ourselves and say, we understand that this is ridiculous too, is an absolutely incredible thing. Well,
a line we've had almost from the beginning of the project was Christians have always been funny, just not on purpose. That kind of became a writing theme throughout the whole. I think that line was in one of the earliest. That line probably came from. It might have been the first draft. That might have been the line that we've had for 30 some drafts that we've done. So
right on. Well, hey man, we appreciate your time with us today. We wrap up all of our interviews though with a segment that we borrowed from a buddy of ours named Stephen Mansfield called Controlled Rowdiness. And we're just going to ask you some questions off the cuff. Give us the first answer that comes to your head. Some of these will be either or, and others will need you to fill in the blank. So I want to start with, who do you believe was the sexiest president in the United States?
Who was the sexiest president of the United States?
The sexiest U.S. president.
Wow. That's, I haven't given that a lot of thought, that I don't find myself in any way attracted to most of our presidents, but
the correct answer was William Howard Taft.
Oh, I was going to go John F. Kennedy.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah,
he was the most photogenic.
That's true. He was for a little while.
He was women, fawned over him.
I
would say women would find him attractive in that,
especially way. Marilyn Monroe.
That is the rumor.
Yeah. Any president who's rumored who is connected to Marilyn Monroe in that way has to be defined as the sexiest president we've ever had.
I'll take that. Overruled.
Yeah, overruled. John F. Kennedy.
What if you could have one accent? What would it be?
One accent?
Yeah, not American.
It would be English.
Wrong. New Zealand.
Oh,
sorry. That was the
New Zealand's kind of like to New Zealand's they've taken it a direction. It's almost like the Southern accent. It's like, okay, it's American, but you took it too far.
Yeah.
So come back a little bit, and that's where you got the English accent. New Zealand, Australia, all those guys just take it to that's like the Southern version of the English accent to me.
It is easier to monetize an English accent, I think. For New Zealand, you can only be in Lord of the Rings movies.
I think so. I think you're pretty limited.
Voiceover, and
true.
Man, you could just.
Yeah.
Go back 20. If I could go back and have an English accent while I was dating.
Just read books online all the time.
All right. So you've got a new movie coming out, and one of the big things that's happening, it did have a release in theaters. We're hoping for another Fathom event to get to see it in the theaters ourselves. But when I sit in the movie theater, I need to know which armrest is mine.
Which armrest is yours?
Yeah.
Your armrest is the right one.
I agree.
Yeah. What's your favorite Mel Brooks movie?
My favorite, it's The Producers. Without hesitation.
That is a great Zero Mostel.
Springtime for Hitler in Germany. You can't beat that. As a satire, you cannot beat that movie. That movie is satirical. It's hilarious. The funniest Mel Brooks movie to me.
Yeah. To be fair, there's no real wrong answer to that question.
Yeah, all of his things are great. You did mention earlier in our interview about the Christian version of Taken, and so we were curious, who would you cast as Liam Neeson in the Christian version of Taken, Still Taken, and or I'll Get You Back, I Will Still Get You Back, and I Will Get You Back Again.
Leland Clausen.
Leland Clausen.
Yeah. My best friend from Canada.
We're going to have a picture of Leland that's right here, and that will happen in post. Yeah. And our last question for you, man. As a parent, do you endorse the ask forgiveness and not permission rule?
Not as a parent.
As a pastor?
As a pastor?
As a pastor, Sure, there's extenuating circumstances sometimes. You just have to go and have a worship service. You can't ask, "Is the park open? Is this legal?"
There are also serpent stances, as we've seen.
Yeah, this is
in Genesis.
This is very true.
There you go.
Well, hey, Thor, thanks so much for being on the show, for playing along. You guys make sure you check out Church People and follow Thor in the links in the show notes. We got a lot of cool stuff that we're linked to. Buy his books and
definitely go watch Church People.
ChurchPeopleFilm.com.
Yeah.
Thanks for being on, man. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thor freaking Ramsey.
Thor Ramsey.
Okay, that's got to be one of the funniest interviews we've done in a really long time.
It was very funny.
It's so much energy, man.
Yep.
That is probably my favorite part about him.
By the way, he said he used the word glut.
Yes.
I wanted to ask him about this, and I decided not to.
Okay, well, great job.
It was glutting. I think it was glutting. Did you hear that?
No.
Maybe we'll have to go back and double check. But
we'll review the tape.
He used it as a verb.
Maybe it just means that he was indulging.
Yeah. It was something about glutting with comedy or something like that. But,
okay.
I was fast. I just thought about that. Like, if it's too late now, but if we went back and watched my face, I'm just thinking about that.
I'm gonna go back and watch your face.
Yeah,
that's part of my job, boss man. So this
isn't starting off very well.
It's starting off great for me, I think. So Thor has a ton of stuff that he's involved in. We talked about his books. We talked about the movie Church People, which we're both really anticipating watching. Mm-hmm. But I want to talk a little bit about, at the end of the conversation, how we got Thor on. Okay, so we're going to peel back the curtain real quick, and instead of debriefing the interview,
I'll have a screenshot too.
Yeah. Okay, so Thor, we booked with, Thor's got a great agent, Tim Grable, with the Grable Group. We've had some stuff like this happen in the past. A lot of the great guests that we have on are great guests because they have so much happening. They're working on Thor right now has got a couple of other movie scripts in development that he's working with some other people, and so we're blessed with the opportunity to get on some very, very busy folks. And so Danley and I, it's just a couple of minutes after 6, and we're like, all right, well, we might need to just double check, make sure on our end that we've sent all the right emails to the right people, because that was an issue early on. We sent an email to the wrong person in some previous shows, or we've gotten our time zones mixed up, or things like that.
I feel like I'm getting thrown under the bus.
No. This isn't about you. These are just the issues that we've had.
They were my fault.
Well, I gave you a wrong email address, and then we had some other people that we put everything in CST, which is Central Standard Time, which is where we operate. But they read it and read the time as theirs, and they're sending us text messages, and they're like, well, where are you? And we're like, we're at home because you missed it. So there's a lot of those things that have happened. So we're going back, double checking everything on our end. And then we look, and Thor's church is listed as one of the things that he does. And so when Danley gets on his page, why don't you give us the play-by-play of what happened?
Well, I went to his page, and I was like, I'm not sure. I know that he's at, we can say the name of the church, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Center Church.
Right.
And so I went to their website, and I saw there was a chat.
Right.
There was a chat option where you can chat in. And at this point, I'm like, he's going to show up any minute. I'm just gonna talk to this person,
or a bot. I'm gonna just talk to this bot.
Yeah. So I opened it up. They said, hey, how can I help you? And I said, hey, what does Thor Ramsey do at your church? And then there was something that replied that said he preaches.
Nice.
And so I was like, okay, I'm bored.
There's a quick definition of what Thor does at the church.
We're waiting. I've got time to kill. Yeah. So I replied, he's supposed to be on our podcast 4 minutes ago. Is there a special way to summon him, like with a thunderbolt? And then they replied, sorry, I'll jump right in, which is when we had talked. I wonder if this goes to Thor.
Like, I wonder, because we don't know how big the church is, right?
No.
Maybe it's a bot. Maybe it
could be someone managing their social media, just to answer questions about
anybody.
Times and directions. And
right to his phone.
Thor.
It went right to his phone is how he's got it set up. He just immediately was like, I'll hop right on.
It could not have been funnier.
It was definitely the best way to start the interview.
It worked.
Yep.
I got to make a Thor joke right off the bat.
So good.
Yeah. And then he joined, and then I think I may have made one more Thor joke, maybe two.
Yeah, one
and then
or
I
two.
told him I was going to stop, and I made one more.
Yeah. Well,
but I whispered it. So.
It's quiet. It's just like,
yeah.
But he was a great guest, a great interview. Man, that's got to be one of my favorites that we've done in a really long time. And I'm curious at some of the stuff. I really liked how sort of self-effacing he was, right? That he's got a huge resume, but a very small ego. Talking about some of the things he's been involved in, especially the stuff in particular that he has going on at his church. There's a lot of people that follow the cult of personality to churches, and one of the things I think is very rare is a pastor that is shepherding the church instead of a pastor that's at a small church that has got one eye looking on the bigger church that he's going to go to.
I loved everything you said.
Yeah, and he doesn't. He's happy with working with the people, diving into their lives, helping them sort out the mess, and being part of that mess. Because as he's said multiple times on not just on his podcast but also with us, like he knows he's not perfect, and there's a lot of this stuff within the Christian experience that we just go through together.
There's only been one person that
it's
was
just
perfect,
life,
and it was Don Lemon. If you're in Canyon Lake and you're looking for a church, go check out Center Church. And their website, centerchurch.life, you can chat Thor.
Yeah, chat
didn't
with
say
Thor
that.
on the thing.
Go check out Center Church, Brady.
Yeah.
That's my friend that lives there.
The film is Church People. You can check it out at churchpeoplefilm.com, thorramsey.com if you want to check out the stuff that he's got going on. He posts new podcasts on the Protest podcast where he talks specifically about Christian worldviews and the freedom of speech. Is a big topic of his. He does have the song that is stuck so far in the back of my head and just bouncing around right now.
He said he's a radical free speech defender.
He did say he was a radical free speech defender.
I wanted to ask him about that. I forgot.
Well, we just should have him back on.
We'll chat you soon.
The next movie when it comes out. So thank you guys for watching The Reverend and the Reprobate. Check out everything that's going on with Thor.
Yeah.
And remember, everyone, say a prayer for Josh Doverman. And we'll see you guys next week.
Hey, this is Thor Ramsey with the movie Church People, and don't listen to the Reverend and I can't say it, and that's why you shouldn't listen to it. If you can't say it, then you can't listen to it. The Reverend and the Reprobate. That reprobate. Who uses that kind of language anymore? This is a show from the 1890s. Radio didn't even exist. They're ahead of their time, but which makes them behind their time from the 1890s. Don't listen to them. It's ridiculous.
Thanks for checking out Center Church. How can I assist you? What does Thor
also mute that
Ramsey do at your church? I asked to Thor Ramsey pastor who asked me what I want to know about their church.
Oh, nice.
So he's a pastor there.
He's the pastor at Center Church.
Yeah. He preaches. That's what he said. Great. We're trying to get a hold of him.
You're trolling the poor internet guy. I think that's great because it could be him. It's only 4:00 there.
That's what I'm wondering.
Go for it.
Is there a special way to summon him? Okay, I asked. We'll see.
Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. Well, maybe if he does come on, we can just tell him, "Hey, look." We sent a message to your bot.
Yeah, we messaged your church looking for you. Like, what? We asked if there a special way to summon you, like with a thunderbolt.
Yeah. Is there something in particular?
That's actually what I said.
Can you get Heimdall to put Thor on the line, please?
Sorry, I'll jump right on. Amazing.
That is awesome.
What are the odds? You know that he's laughing his butt off.
Oh my
right now.
gosh, that's so good.